and you need caring, competent professionals in this field. If you encounter nurses who are malicious, please remove them from practice. If you have nurses engaging in high-risk behaviors, they need to be disciplined. But we cannot afford to take out nurses for clerical errors. I will tell you, too, that the legislature discovered that the Kansas Board of Nursing has an extra $4 million that they have accrued from these fines and fees that they've assessed us. And so the legislature has encouraged nurses to submit a claim against the state for the lost wage. I don't know if they're doing lost wages, but at least attorney fees and everything that we've incurred. And then they're going to take it out of that $4 million and give it back to nurses. So the legislature really wants to get this fixed. They're spending over, I think, $44 million on contract labor just for our state hospitals because we don't have enough nurses.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Before we get to our guest, Matt, can you do a quick search for Florida man? And then, put in whatever date you want and maybe read me some of the headlines.
Okay, let's see. Florida man. Let me pick a date. Let's say I'm going to go back. Let's do June 21st, 2016. Just picking a random date here. Mm-hmm. And let's see. Oh boy, let's see. What do we get? Okay, I don't know if I can read some of these on the air here. So
okay, use your discretion, I guess.
Let's see. Florida man pulls gun on chef's daughter at Starbucks. What's another one here? I'm looking for one maybe with like an alligator or something. Oh wait, Florida man charged with throwing alligator into fast food restaurant. There we go. Oh man, maybe those fries were underdone. The alligator will eat them,
Yeah, I guess so. Well, Florida man, if people don't listen, it's just all these crazy stories. And if you go to Florida, I'm sure we have listeners in Florida. Hopefully, don't encounter them all the time. As crazy as some of these stories are, today's guest has one that's really right up there. Before I bring her in, let me give you a little background. She's a nurse practitioner who focuses on helping patients and families dealing with dementia. She was working at a place in Kansas, but then it got bought out by a healthcare conglomerate, which isn't as good a fit for her. Also, right around that time, her husband was diagnosed with cancer. So with so many changes, she stepped away to take care of him. While she was doing that, her license lapsed. No big deal, she thought. Just pay the renewal fee, maybe a fine, and she'd be back to work. But when she tried to renew, she found herself in the middle of a fight with the state nursing board, and that opened up a whole world of bad politics. I want to welcome Amy Siple, who is a nurse practitioner, to the podcast. Amy, welcome.
Thank you, David. Delighted to be here.
Well, I'm so excited for this conversation. You went through a lot, unfortunately, and I'm interested, really having you kind of tell your story. So maybe just some of the basics with regard to your license to work in the medical field. Like, what does the state usually require to renew a license?
Sure. So in order to maintain your license in the state of Kansas, you have to have a certain number of continuing education credits, maintain malpractice insurance, and pay licensing fees every 2 years. And in 32 years, I had never missed that deadline. Now, my continuing education credits were up to date prior to the deadline. My malpractice had never lapsed, but I was late paying them. It just wasn't on my radar.
Well, it seems kind of silly. Like we all make mistakes or miss a deadline. It seems like it shouldn't be such a big deal, but it just really seemed like it became a huge ordeal. Can you maybe take us through a little bit, like the narrative of what transpired?
Certainly. So I anticipated, paying a late fee. I need to maintain my licensure, but I also wasn't in practice during the time. It's the only time in my career which I have not been employed in practice. But the Board of Nursing said instead they planned to discipline me. They said that part of that discipline includes a public shaming process in which you were put on 3 databases in perpetuity and listed as unprofessional. Now, this makes it very difficult to secure employment opportunities, to maintain malpractice insurance, to get hospital privileges, and can honestly devastate someone's career.
Yeah. I mean, public shaming seems a little odd, particularly if you just forgot to renew your license and pay the fee. I mean, that seems like really not commensurate with the offense. So who makes up the board? Who's on the board? And, do they have medical backgrounds? What are they like?
So the Board of Nursing are appointed by the governor. And that is a problem, I think, because you end up with very partisan boards typically. And she also appoints the executive director. And then it's the staff that make up most of those decision-making process, I should say, engaged in disciplining nurses and deciding what kind of punishments they should incur. And there is certainly unequal distribution of those punishments, those disciplines that we see delivered onto nurses. And once my case really became public, more and more nurses started calling me. And I realized I probably had the least egregious case out of all of them.
Really?
So many of the stories would just break your heart. And honestly, I had a nurse approach me not long ago, and she said her friend committed suicide after she was put through this process.
Oh, my. That's awful. So are the rules and regulations created by the board, or are they done by the legislature?
Yes. So the rules and regulations in Kansas, and this is the way it is for most states, are created by the Board of Nursing. And in fact, if you make a complaint against the Board of Nursing, it goes to the Board of Nursing. So they're a silo into themselves. And so there's just not a lot of oversight. I did testify on behalf of a bill last spring, which would give the legislature oversight over the rules and regs of this administrative organization and the other fourth branch of government that we see within our state and other states. They just sort of go unchecked.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we see a really unequal distribution of punishments, and the punishments just don't match the crimes. In addition, this is really causing problems with access to care in Kansas and other states when you are eliminating nurses for clerical errors.
Well, I think we hear all over the country that there's a nursing shortage, right? And I imagine that's true in Kansas too. So if we have people with your level of experience who want to be in this industry and serving people, I would think that it's really working against our own best interest to dismiss people and prevent people from being involved because of clerical errors. I mean, we're all on board if people are acting irresponsibly and endangering people's health and all that. I mean, I don't think we have none of us have issues with that, but you just didn't renew your license and pay a fee. What, now my understanding is they asked you to sign some sort of declaration. What was that piece of paper they wanted you to sign?
So it's called a consent agreement, and it's really akin to a guilty verdict. So they really push this on nurses. Sign this consent agreement, and they don't tell you they're going to engage in the public shaming process and put you on databases when they do that and what it's going to do to your professional career. But if you'll sign that guilty plea and pay them money, they make a lot of money from the fines and fees that they extract from nurses. Then they don't have to go to court. So just to give you an example of real life of kind of how this happens, I'm going to tell you about a psychiatric nurse practitioner here in Kansas. Her name is Anna, and Anna is tremendous at what she does. She has this sort of no-nonsense approach with clients. She's very direct with them. She works a lot with DCF children. She works a lot with addictions counseling, and she's been very successful with awards and accolades. She's renewing her license, and to renew your license, you have to renew your RN and your APRN. So when you go to renew, and she did this last December, it said which one you want to renew, and you can't click on both at the same time. You have to do one and then the other, and why would you make that system? But so she clicks on RN, you go to another page, you answer all these questions, you go to another page, pay a fee. Then you go back to the home page, you have to click APRN, then another page, answer the exact same questions again, and then pay another fee. So she does this and she thinks that she's finished. Well, then 2 months later, a pharmacist calls and says, we can't fill scripts for your patients anymore. You're not licensed. She calls the Board of Nursing and she said, I paid my fees. I've got 2 transaction fees. What are you talking about? I'm not licensed. And they said, oh, you clicked the RN box twice. She's like, what?
Oh.
Why? Who would want to renew your RN license twice? And they said, well, you did. And so now you're under investigation because you were practicing without a license during that time, and you can't see patients and you can't prescribe medications while you're under investigation. And she says, I'm a psych NP with my own practice. What do I do with all these patients? And they said, well, just send them to the emergency room. She said, are you out of your mind? It took them years to tell me their stories about their rape or whatever. This is just cruel. And it's really dangerous they can't go off these meds cold turkey. I've got a lot of patients. And the board just didn't care. Then they come to her, a little over a month later and said, sign this consent agreement. And then you can get back to work and we'll reinstate your license. She doesn't understand what this means. So she signs the consent agreement. And so she can get back to work. They reinstate her license, but then her malpractice company calls her and says, we're not going to renew your malpractice insurance because you admitted to being unprofessional. And you cannot be a nurse practitioner without malpractice insurance. So she contacts other companies and she gets it at 4 times the rate. So now her malpractice is what a lot of people would pay for rent. Then Blue Cross and Blue Shield says you can't see Blue Cross patients anymore because you're unprofessional. And then United investigates her. And then the Board of Nursing calls the Behavioral Science Board and says, because she's also a licensed therapist, she said, Kansas has labeled her as unprofessional as a nurse. So now the Behavioral Science Board is investigating her. And the courts used to send her all these cases of folks who've gotten in trouble with alcohol and drug addictions, and they ceased their contract with her as well. So this is what happens when you sign the consent agreement, and they don't tell you that. But this is for clicking the wrong box. That's what's happening.
Yeah, that's insane. That's just insane. I mean, again, if someone's putting lives at risk or, harming people, it's a very different thing than clicking the wrong box. My gosh. So, I mean, does this happen are the punishments applied consistently, or does it seem kind of random?
No. And so in fact, Anna renewed her license the same month as another friend of ours. Her name is Sarah. And Sarah had the exact same error as Anna. She renewed her RN license twice instead of RN and APRN. I mean, it's really a kind of a catch and gotcha system. But the Board of Nursing called Sarah and said, hey, you clicked on RN twice, and they helped her fix it. Anna, they crushed her. Likewise, you'll see nurses who, and keep in mind, Anna, Sarah, and none of us have ever been sued. We've never had any complaints filed against us. We have no past histories. And all of us have received awards and accolades for the service that we have rendered. But you also have nurses and nurse practitioners who renew their license late and have no discipline that comes against them. It's just an unequal distribution. It's a very frustrating system, but they're crushing some of us and removing us out of practice, and other people get a pass. I wish everybody got a pass. I'm not frustrated with the people that get a pass. That's the way it should be. Give people a small fine if they're late. But my goodness, Kansas needs our help. Our patients need us.
Right. Government's not serving the people when it's excluding and crushing people who made a clerical error, clicked on the wrong thing, paid late, and excluding them from practicing, especially in something like nursing where we need people. There should be reason applied in government. I mean, we can expect that professionals should be able to look at this and say, oh, hey, she clicked the wrong box. Let's intercede like they did with Sarah. I mean, that's absurd. That doesn't happen. I mean, it's why people see it as a bureaucracy, and that it's disconnected from serving the taxpayers and the people that it's supposed to help and protect. Have you heard stories of other states, or is Kansas particularly bad?
Well, Kansas is bad, but there are some states that are worse than others. I've heard California and Tennessee are pretty draconian as well in the way that they handle these types of cases. But, each Board of Nursing is kind of an entity unto itself. And so there's just not a lot of oversight, and there's not an overarching regulatory body. I was told by one nurse investigator she told me that when she went through training, and she went through national training, she was told to assume all nurses are guilty when complaints come in. So likewise, I will tell you that nurses can have action taken against their license because they don't pay their student loans on time, because they get in an argument with somebody at an airport, and so they can be reported. It can have nothing to do with taking care of patients. So our license are at risk, and the boards of nursing have written the rules and regs in such a way that gives them incredible latitude to decide who they want to come after and who they don't. And if you do try to fight the system, it is set up so that you will fail. So, and I can give you an example of that if you would like.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So whenever, fortunately, we have some amazing legislators here in Kansas, and I'm so thankful for them. And they decided to bring the Board of Nursing into a 2 days of hearings to make them justify what they are doing to Kansas nurses. And the Board of Nursing said in these hearings that 100% of nurses are signing the consent agreement. Well, I'm actually the only one that hasn't. And so I got up and testified and said, let me tell you why 100% have signed, because it's 100% illogical not to do it. Because when I go to court to an administrative law judge, that if that judge rules in my favor, in the Board of Nursing's rules and regs, they can decide to disregard what the judge says and still take action against me. If the judge rules against me, the Board of Nursing is going to send me a bill of all the fees that they incurred to take me to court. And then I'll have to try to appeal that decision if I can still afford it. Because while you're under investigation, you can't get a job because nobody knows if you're going to lose your license. Then when I get that bill, if I can't afford it and I can't pay all of their attorney fees, then they can revoke my license and turn me over to the Office of Inspector General. And at that point, I won't be able to be licensed for anything else. I couldn't even be a hairdresser at that point, and I'll be flagged on background checks. Furthermore, the Board of Nursing has it in their rules and regs that they can drop the case and resurrect it at any time. So they can wait till public pressure dies down in 6 months or 5 years from now. They can contact me and say, lawyer up, we're coming after you again, even if there's no new evidence. This is why we need legislative oversight. When they write their own rules and regs, the fox is guarding the hen house.
Well, I think we see it all the time when we talk to folks who on this podcast who are battling government, really battling government overreach. Unfortunately, there's some folks who work in government. There's plenty of good folks working in government, but
Yes.
there are some folks who really become infatuated with power, and they whether they think they're doing the right thing or they just like power, they really wield that hammer of government wildly and aggressively. And it seems like this is such an example of a power imbalance where well-meaning nurses who want to help people are being excluded or having their reputations damaged, their professional prospects damaged, just because it seems like an out-of-control agency or board to me.
I would agree.
Yeah. So tell me about the changes you all are working on, and the engagement with the legislature. What does that look like in the future, or where does it stand now?
So I do have a lot of hope for the next generation of nurses. I care more about the cause than I do about my case. And my attorney had told me from the beginning, you can be the sacrificial lamb and you're probably going to pay a heavy toll to do so because they're going to be out for your total destruction, which they are. But he said, I think you may be able to help affect change for the next generation. So fortunately, we have just a supermajority in our legislature, which we need because we've got a very leftist governor. And this legislative body has been coming alongside nurses and working on legislation to present next year because they can change statutes. And of course, statutes will trump their rules and regs In addition, we need to get a constitutional amendment passed, which I believe will be on the ballot in the next primary in August of next year, which would create a pathway for the legislature to have oversight over the rules and regs. So there is a strong path moving forward. And honestly, we've got even some support from some of the people on the other side of the aisle. But I do believe change will come. And I'm thrilled to see that. We have to protect our nurses, and we have to protect the patients that we serve. I will tell you, in Anna's case, when those patients lost access to her, patients went psychotic. Patients lost their jobs. I mean, it had horrific effects on her clients. And that's just one person. This is happening to so many. And I could tell you a dozen stories that would just make you cry.
Oh, I totally believe it. I mean, I don't like to see overregulation and a punitive government agency acting anywhere. But I mean, if they're punitive on the hairdresser front, it does affect how somebody could, earn a living. But maybe some of those customers get bad haircuts or bad color or something like that. On the nursing end, a nurse practitioner, it's people who, sometimes I imagine in Anna's case, they're like a lifeline. They found this professional who's helping them get through the most difficult stuff in their life. And if they become untethered there, it's dangerous and life-altering. And that's so sad. Ugh.
We take care of people during the most vulnerable states of their existence.
Yeah.
And you need caring, competent professionals in this field. If you encounter nurses who are malicious, please remove them from practice. If you have nurses engaging in high-risk behaviors, they need to be disciplined. But we cannot afford to take out nurses for clerical errors. I will tell you, too, that the legislature discovered that the Kansas Board of Nursing has an extra $4 million that they have accrued from these fines and fees that they've assessed us. And so the legislature has encouraged nurses to submit a claim against the state for the lost wage. I don't know if they're doing lost wages, but at least attorney fees and everything that we've incurred. And then they're going to take it out of that $4 million and give it back to nurses. So the legislature really wants to get this fixed. They're spending over, I think, $44 million on contract labor just for our state hospitals because we don't have enough nurses. And yet you're taking out people for clerical errors. We had another nurse contact me, and she put in the wrong date on her credit card. She's filling it out on her phone, puts in the wrong date. She's not flagged and notified. No. They wait, and then they come back and said, your credit card didn't go through. You're practicing without a license. Give us money. You're on, you're unprofessional. You're on the databases.
Wow. So do you think that, I'm asking you to kind of speculate on motives here, but do you think that there's basically a directive or an expectation from leadership that, hey, this is an opportunity for us to collect more money via these fines? Or do you think it's some bad eggs in the enforcement end? Or what do you think is the source of what seems like a pretty egregious problem?
It's really hard to say. When it first happened to me, I suspected it was because I stood up against the mandates. And I know the Board of Nursing said that they were going to, or they wanted to come after nurses who did. And the only thing that I stood up against, I spoke a lot publicly on, was the harm of locking down my older adults. The hazards of immobility and isolation are well documented, and we have been proven right on this. I mean, I spoke in the House and the Senate and several organizations. I said, please stop. You are killing my patients. So I stood against that. And I was asked to speak, I think it was in 2022, for the National Council of State Boards of Nursing. But when they found out I didn't take the COVID shot, then I was canceled. And so I'm sure that was an embarrassment to the Kansas State Board of Nursing. So when it first happened to me, I thought, well, okay, this is probably retaliation. And I don't know that's for sure the case, because there are just so many nurses that have come forward, and I haven't asked them about their politics. The first group of us that came forward, when we talked, we did find that we all had that in common. We were all leaned to the right. and the board leans more to the left. But now there have been so many more nurses who've come forward, and I haven't asked them those questions. So I honestly don't know. I don't know their reason. I know they make a lot of money off of this, and I think power concentrates, and I think people can just kind of get on this power trip of they can do whatever they want, and there's just no accountability.
Wow.
And they threaten you. I mean, I was told by the Board of Nursing's attorney, you have no idea how bad we can make this for you. I mean, a lot of nurses.
That's just not the way government shouldn't act that way. And I'm happy that some of the members of the legislature are providing oversight and are really engaged, have really gotten engaged in this issue, because that's the way our government's supposed to work. It's not supposed to work with unelected bureaucrats threatening citizens. So I'm so sorry that you've gone through this, and other colleagues of yours. But well, Amy, I really appreciate you telling your story and sharing it with us. Unfortunately, it's another story like we've heard a number of times of government overreach and people kind of wielding power unjustly. So I really give you a lot of I applaud you for showing a lot of courage and standing up to this.
I would just say, to God be the glory. If we do not fight back, change will never occur. And if we would just become united in just taking a stand for justice, I think we're supposed to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. If we would stand together, the government would not be able to treat citizens like this. But there's so much at stake. And the biggest losers in all of this, the biggest losers are the clients that we serve. I think about how many people I would have been able to take care of over this past year, but I've been sidelined. And there are many things in life I'm not good at, but I'm telling you, I'm really good at this. And so are these other nurses that have been sidelined. You guys need us. We need to get back out there and get to work.
Amen. Yeah, unfortunately, we hear too often on this podcast of stories of people who, really have to go and take that stand and push back against government and return it to its proper place. And so I'm really glad that you're doing that. And I wish you the best of luck. I hope there's some real change in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.